everyone. I am Priya with Vine Roots, and I am super excited for this interview today because we are talking to somebody who is a professional full-time forager. But what she's foraging is not for going on your dinner plate or salad bowl, it's for this incredible gin. Welcome, Geraldine Kavanagh. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you again.
Yes, we first met here in Toronto a few months ago when you were out presenting this gin to media, and I was so impressed with not only the flavor of the gin, because it is truly unique because you've taken it up several notches in terms of what makes it unique, but also just with the story behind the bottle, behind the gin, and also knowing that there's really only a very small team that goes into putting this gin together. So my first question to you, Geraldine, is let's pronounce it properly. Tell me how you say the name.
Called Glendalough. So
Glendalough.
yeah, in the Irish it's Glendalough, which means the valley of two lakes. So Glendalough it's a couple of miles from where I am now. It's a glacial valley in Wicklow. Wicklow's a very beautiful place. It's very lush and green, and it's like as lush and green as could be now at this time of
Mhm.
year. It's not very densely populated. It's got mountains, rivers,
Mhm.
lakes. It's just such a great place to be a forager because you can find everything here, and it's a great place to work outside as well. So that's what I'm
And
doing now.
yes, I see that, and we're going to show people very shortly what you're foraging today. But let's start with a little bit of your history in terms of how did you become a professional forager?
Well, they don't teach it to you at school anyway, that's for sure. Yeah, so I taught myself over like so many years. I got my first book 30 years ago. I still have it. And I've always been an outdoor person. Like I can't remember the last time I had an indoor job. I'm just I'm just quite active, and I don't like sitting down all day, and I love being outside and I love plants. So somehow I ended up with a job that is the perfect job for me, just through loads and loads of, I suppose, fate, really. But I spent my childhood mostly outside. I never watched TV or anything, and I was always teaching myself about plants and just observing nature. And then it's a long story, but I ended up in organic farming, and then I ended up looking at wild food and thinking about what you can eat in the wild, possibly because of the effort that went into growing the organic food. And then I go, hang on a minute, all that stuff's just growing there by itself. We're not watering it,
Oh,
we're
that's
not
it.
doing anything. It's just there, and it's no labor involved. So I explored that more over many years, just slowly finding out and being fascinated by what there was just to eat, just there, like,
Mhm.
and get the flavors of the you could drive along a hedgerow that's full of green plants and think, oh, nothing. But when you start to taste the edible ones, not the poisonous ones, obviously, you can leave the flavors, but you have to be very careful. You have to teach yourself.
Mhm.
You have picking, because it's not like the supermarket. Some things are poisonous. So I just taught myself as a hobby. Then I started teaching when my children were born because I didn't want to go back to work full time. I wanted to stay at home. And then I had a market stall where I used to sell all sorts of things like vinegars and jams and breads and soups
Mhm.
and freshly foraged mushrooms. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I was in one of the main newspapers in Ireland, and the guys from Glendalough Distillery happened to read about me, and they were just about to start making their own gin, but they wanted the gin to be from Wicklow. So that's kind of how it all came about. They read about me and thought, how about we put wild plants in the gin, and then it'll have that sense of terroir. And
Mhm.
called me up, and I had no idea how to make gin, but I said I'd give it a shot. And I suppose because of what we were using, and I think we actually started around this time of year, so we're using like all the incredible flavors that are around us in, I think it was like May, June, and the gin was just so good. We only made like a very small batch the first year, but
Yeah.
it was just good because we went out foraging, we picked the botanicals and we put them in the still, and I suppose that's how we continued on. And that's how we never would have known, like, if you use dried botanicals, that you could get such incredible flavors. So we've continued on to this day. We make a lot more than 2,000 bottles, which we did the first year, but we still make it in exactly the same way, because once you know what it's like, you like, well, we can't do it any other way. So putting fresh botanicals into the still, the day they're picked, or into alcohol for distilling within a few days.
So much information there, and I'm going to backtrack
Yeah,
because there's lots that I want to pick up on.
yeah, you
So
only asked a question.
that's okay. It's like, well, interview done, but
Yeah,
no, so much amazing information there, and especially like starting with how you grew into this career. I just love the story of you started doing something you loved and were really passionate about, and you turned that into a career, and that's such a great lesson for so many people to follow what you are passionate about, not
wow, yeah.
necessarily, having dreams and goals. There are so many ways to a career path, but
Mm,
when it is something that you just love doing and then it can become your career, it's so fulfilling. And
yeah.
I know that from personal experience. So I do want to pick up on how you became part of the Glendalough family, because they were not known for making gin. They were primarily whiskey producers, correct?
Yeah, they were selling whiskey and poachine, and the time we started making gin, there has been a gin craze since then, and there has been a lot more interest in using local botanicals. But when we started, I don't know if anyone else was doing that. So yes, they were. Sorry, I have a little bit of hay fever and pollen on my face, so um, I don't want to sneeze. Yeah, so they were selling whiskey and poachine, and then they decided to have a go at making gin. So they bought a lovely new still, which we still use today, and every single batch of gin has been made in that still, which we call Kathleen. It's a
Oh,
beautiful. Yeah, well, stills have to have a lady's name, and Kathleen was associated with Saint Kevin, who founded the monastery at Glendalough. So Glendaloug's full of stories, so you need hours for
I
all the
love
details.
that. I
Yeah,
had no
but
idea. Is that just a superstition to name your still with a female name?
don't know, like ships always get a woman's name as well. I don't know why, but it's always, so we call the still Kathleen because she fancied Kevin, but he was devoted to God, so she had to become a nun. So, but yeah, so Kathleen is the
The
name.
age-old story.
Oh yeah, yeah. So they decided, yeah, to have a go at making gin, and bought a special, a still that was going to be
Mhm.
exclusive gin. And yeah, then they made a few batches, but then they read about me in the paper because Glendalough, the guys who founded Glendalough always wanted to do things in their own way and do things differently. Our motto is stand apart. It's probably still on the bottle. I think it is the new bottle. So it's like, don't take the easy route.
Mhm.
Find doing something, even if it's difficult. Don't do the standard thing. Do something that has meaning. And a good story. And yeah, so, and then St. Kevin founded Glendalough, so he's on the bottle because the
Yeah.
story of similar kind of a story.
Yes.
That's St. Kevin there on the front of the bottle. He founded the monastery there, and he also followed his own path in life and took the
Mhm.
hard. Something great came out of it. So
So now let's move on to this idea of terroir. And this is what makes Glendalough gin stand apart, because standard gin has a very typical sort of recipe.
yeah,
But you all wanted to really make something that expressed where this gin came from. And that's a concept that I'm familiar with because I've been around wine people
yeah,
for the last 12 years. And
mm,
they always talk about terroir in wine because when you have a wine from Italy, it tastes and smells and is reminiscent of, evokes so many more ideas differently from a wine from, say, France or New Zealand. And that's all
mm,
because of where it's grown, where what the winds are like, what the lakes are like, what the water is like. That concept of terroir is not something I'm familiar with in terms of gin or spirits in general. So that's where you came in, of course, because they decided to put more of what grows naturally in the area into the gin to really give it that idea of terroir. So now
yeah.
that we're talking about that, I do want to know what is in your basket right now and what you're picking.
Well, this is like a minuscule amount of what I pick over the year, but in the basket now is fresh elderflower. You can see, I think you can see, it still has the pollen on it. So that's when
Yeah.
it has this kind of lemony yellow. And that's like my hands turn yellow by the end of the day. My face is yellow, my clothes are yellow. So we have to get that elderflower in
So
perfect.
pretty.
It's picked into this basket because that's going to keep it cool over the day. If I was to pick it, say, into a plastic bag or something, it's
Hmm.
going to, and it has wild yeast on it, so that's going to ferment, and it's going to smell really bad by the end of the day. But I'm keeping it nice and cool in this basket. The baskets are made here in Ireland. They're made of willow. Willow is a tree that grows here. You cut it back and then it gets new shoots every year. So you harvest it and it just keeps growing for like even 100 years. You can just keep harvesting it. So these are all made with Irish willow in Ireland, and that means we don't use any packaging for any of the foraging for the whole year. And it's nice. I have tons of these, loads of baskets. They're everywhere. So I use it for all my work. And then, so we pick a lot of, basically our gin takes a year to make. So I've been making this since late February. I started making this. We started. It's myself, Rowdy and Sam. Rowdy and Sam are the distillers and I'm the forager. So I started harvesting for the 2023 gin in February when the sorrel came out. And then I moved on to other plants. And so we follow the year and we harvest what's in season when it's fresh. So now I'm very much in summer. So that's a real summery basket there. I have the oxeye daisies that in the same family as chamomile. So grassy, kind of those kind of grassy herbal notes that you get from chamomile or from oxeye daisy. And these are just wild roses that just grow all around the place, that have an incredible perfume. Like if you can smell, I have honeysuckle in the car. Like when I get back in the car, the smell is just amazing. It's like the best perfume ever.
Well,
So
I
these
feel
are,
like I can almost smell it through the camera, just at how, just seeing how vibrant the colors and just seeing all those pretty blossoms in that basket. It
it's so
just makes
good.
me, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you feel like, I don't know, it makes me think of Anne of Green Gables, who's a really famous storybook character here in Canada,
Yeah.
just out in, out in the wild and enjoying the greenery around us. And so many people, I think especially over COVID, have rediscovered sort of a love for and a respect for nature because they couldn't go anywhere. So they often just went for walks nearby. And I
Yeah.
know that for you too, you were saying on your website, you do a lot more walks and you have been doing more because
Yeah.
people were staycationing, as we use the phrase here. So seeing that basket full of greens and things that you just are picking daily and seasonally, first of all, evokes so many childhood memories for me. And I'm often in the woods with my dog too. So I see through the seasons, what's growing at different times and just how the woods change through the seasons. It
Yeah.
makes you want to, it makes me definitely want to drink a gin that has all four seasons represented and really that just has so many more plants in it, because
Yeah.
gin is considered to be a botanical spirit, but most gins only have a few of the botanicals in it. How
Mm.
many would you say go into Glendalough gin?
I tend to forget the full amount, but I think there's at least 30. I always
Wow.
start. Some we use quite a lot of elderflower, but we might use a small amount of woodruff. Woodruff's another lovely herb, but we might only use maybe 2 kilos of that for the whole year because it's has a subtle kind of flavor like new mown hay.
Hmm.
Um, then we could put many kilos of sorrel, gives us a flavor like lemon. We'd use a lot of fir because that is, fir is like Christmas tree, has lovely citrusy notes that complement juniper very well. Like you have to have juniper in gin,
Hmm.
and the use doesn't grow in Ireland because it doesn't really grow here anymore. It used to long ago, but it's only in the northwest of the country you find a small amount. So we have wild harvested juniper from Macedonia. It just kind of grows wild there. So our juniper comes from Macedonia.
Right.
And then yeah, I think it's over 30 different botanicals, and they're all basically, when we started making gin first, we actually made seasonal gins
Hmm.
because that's all we could do. So the first batch, we made the first few batches, and then conversations happened because I was talking to the guys and saying, everything that we're picking is going to be gone soon. And they were like, oh. And I was like, well, you know, we could we could use something else. We could do a different gin. And then some of the great marketing minds said, how about we do like seasonal gins and just call this summer gin and then we'll do an autumn. And they were like, could you do a winter gin? And I was like, I think so. So we started off for the first 2 years just doing seasonal gins, but the problems arose that like somebody might call us in autumn and say, I'd like to order your spring gin, and we'd be like,
Right.
sorry, we don't have it next year. So then we decided, and we were asked to try to make a Glendalough gin that was going to be available all year. So that's how that wild botanical gin came about. We worked really hard on a recipe and decided to just forage throughout the whole year, what was available fresh, and then put it all together at the end of the year. So this goes into a constant, like we distill it in a concentrated amount, all of this that I'm picking. And
Hmm.
then it all together at the end of the year to our base recipe that we can make all the time. So it's a kind of an unusual way to make gin, but there's no other way to make this gin because we have to work with the seasons and we have to distill what's available now. Like I can't get once July comes, I could be driving for 50 miles and I won't find any elderflower. So we just work with the seasons. We distill, we know how many bottles we want to make each year. And I get like a shopping list and then I just go off and I work away. And the three of us, because we're doing it so long, we just know how to do it and we know how to scale it up. So it's easy, you know, for us, but for someone else, probably crazy. Yeah. So it's,
Well, you're really
it's
like working hand in hand with Mother Nature in
oh yeah.
every aspect of what you do. Not only that you're foraging seasonally and locally, but that you're picking those plants into wicker baskets, as you said, so not plastic. You know, we're
Yeah.
staying away from that no, and
Yeah.
that whatever you pick goes directly into the still that day. So you're not really preserving anything. Everything is going fresh into the still, and that's just I just don't know that that's being done anywhere else. It's really, really fascinating to me that you can do that, and also that you're the only one picking. So, and
Well,
I know when you were talking to us here in Toronto, you were saying that you pick like so much every day. So, how many of those baskets would you say go into your car every day?
well, now I have to admit I have two helpers today, and I have two helpers for the next 2 weeks to pick with the elderflower because it's
Mhm.
moving because of the hot weather. So I have a girl called Hannah who's helping me. She's just finished school. She's a friend of my daughter, so she's giving me a hand. So sometimes for June I will get help.
Mhm.
Get about well, I actually have one giant basket in the car that we empty this into. So probably maybe 20 or 30 probably baskets this size over the day. Maybe a bit more this time. It depends on the time of year and it depends how our harvest goes. You know, sometimes it's a small harvest, sometimes we don't always know how much we're going to get. So
Right.
yeah.
And
So
can we just see a little bit of what's around you?
well, I just literally stopped at the side of the road here today because I thought the meeting was at 3 o'clock, but so I had to stop. So I just stopped. Like I'll just show you. This is like a kind of quiet country road in Wicklow. Like
Mhm.
there would be growing now. All the time I've been talking to you, not a single car has passed by, so it's a really quiet area. But there'd be woods near here, kind of wilder land near here. So and then you can see over there, I think you can see the mountains and kind of farmland and lots of hedgerows. And it's very quiet and clean. And like, yeah, this is just where I literally stopped to get out of the car. But we'd be foraging in like, where would we be going? To woods, river banks, all over the place, really. And then a lot of people I know, like farmers, would allow me to forage in their hedgerows and things like
Mhm.
that. I'm quite well known. So, yeah.
Well, I have to say, like, I would love to have been there physically with you for this interview, but this is definitely
Yeah.
the next best thing to see you in your natural element. So I
Yeah.
guess just as we round up this interview, let's talk about the team that goes into making this gin. Like when we think of spirits and when we think of wineries, usually there's a really large team that goes into the production and manufacturing of that product. How many
Mm.
people are in your team?
So apart from now, when we have the extra helpers, there's just three of us. So there's me who forages all year round, pretty much, apart from a little bit in the winter when there's not so much to do. Then there's our head distiller Rowdy, who's brilliant. He started a little bit after me. We started in 2014. He was a friend of the founders, and he had a different job, and he was just helping out. And he has a very scientific mind, and he's very accurate.
Mhm.
We're quite different, but we work well together. He makes sure that I record everything and that everything is done exactly the same, so we can create a kind of consistency. And he's very good at distilling. We both have one of our attributes is we both have a good nose. So our still is manually operated. It's not automated because
Okay.
distilling different quantities and different botanicals every day. The distillation process starts off with distillation of the heads, which is a very small part of the distillation, where
Mhm.
all that you might not want from the previous distillation are still in the still. So that's a very short initial part of the distillation. Then the main part of the distillation is the hearts, and then the end is the tails. We only use the hearts of the distillation because it's the cleanest, nicest part of it. The beginning and the end, you get flavors you don't want. Some people will redistill those, but we don't. We just use, because we wanted to make a really premium gin, we only use that part. So the distiller has to be at the still at the beginning and decide, okay, the cutoff point is there, and they have to manually turn a handle. They have to look at the alcohol for like evidence of little drops of oil. They have to
Mm.
smell. Then they allow the hearts to run for a couple of hours, and then they'll have an idea when they're going to change to tails. So they'll be around and they'll be tasting and smelling and deciding cutoff points every day. So Rowdy does that, and also Sam, our assistant distiller, as well, because Rowdy also looks after a lot of things to do with the whiskey. But every single batch is made by 2 or 3 of us. So
Wow.
uh, yeah, so
First of all,
sometimes
I have to say, heads, hearts, and tails, such strange concepts to sort of
I
work with in distilling, but this is truly a handcrafted product, which is also
yeah,
just
it's
amazing that it's really a core team of 3 people, minus
yeah,
the extra helper, so thanks to your daughter's friend for
yeah,
giving you a hand today in the fields. But, just a fantastic product, and I know that this one here is available. We did get to taste the rose gin that you had at
yeah,
the event, but I do hope that that's going to be available soon too, because it was just
yeah.
lovely as
The
well.
roasting is Rowdy's recipe.
Yeah.
Sadly, Rowdy's mum passed away a couple of years ago, and his
Mm.
brother was getting married afterwards, and he decided to make a gin in honor of his mum, and he used roses from her garden along with other things which we foraged on the day, and the gin was made for the wedding, and it turned out to be so good that. The guys decided that we'd release that gin. We changed it. Rowdy changed it a little bit by steeping fresh rose petals in it after distillation to give it that lovely color. But every single batch has roses, a small amount of roses from Rowdy's mum's garden, and she was called Rose. So there's a lovely video on our website.
Yeah.
It would bring a tear to your eye, and Rowdy's very kind to share the story, but it's a lovely story. And
That is a
he,
beautiful
that's,
story, and
yeah, it's amazing.
it's a really pretty gin.
It's
Thank you
stunning.
so much, Geraldine. This has been so lovely, and I just want to suggest too that when you do pick up this bottle, it's so beautiful that you'll want to keep it afterwards. And I know that I'll be sticking some flowers in it probably because I
Yeah,
can't imagine a better way to use it moving forward.
or for water on the table. It's a beautiful bottle. Things that
There
I
you
just
go.
all of the
Yes.
things that I spoke about are featured on that bottle. The basket, the plants, Glendalough. It's the story of everything we do is embossed and in that bottle. So a lot
Yeah.
of thought went. Lovely.
Just a lovely product. And it's been so lovely chatting with you. Thank you for taking time out of your day of foraging and go and collect more of those beautiful flowers.
Nice to have a sit down as well. So thank you for that. And it's
All
lovely to
right.
see you. Yeah,
Have a good day.
thank you. Bye.